I think people, when you say personal brand, people mistake it to mean it has to be deeply personal, and that's not the case. I always say to people, it's about exposure, not feeling exposed. You're not there to tell everybody your deepest, darkest secrets. And I know that there are people that do share a lot of very personal things. And I've definitely shared things that people would consider to be very personal over the years. But that's depending on what you're comfortable with. When you're building a personal brand, it's just allowing people to know the human behind the business, not just about the business, because it helps people to connect with you on a more deep level.
Meet Lea Turner, a LinkedIn powerhouse who started posting on LinkedIn reluctantly, as she says, in 2019, just because she needed to find clients for her transcription business. So fast forward 2 years, and Lea has become one of LinkedIn's most recognizable trainers and influencers. She has turned her expertise into a thriving 6-figure business, including her paid community for small business owners, The Halt. In this episode, Lea shares her incredible journey from overcoming childhood challenges, living with ADHD, to building an authentic personal brand and growing a business. Please hit subscribe to the show and leave a review or comment about how you find this episode. Hey Lea, it's great to see you on the screen on my podcast. I'm so excited.
I'm very glad to be here. It's lovely to see you again.
And I just want to say, first start saying that you look amazing, and whatever you're doing, these last 6 months obviously works for you. Please continue
Thank
doing
you.
this.
I think I just, it was mindset work that I think has really made the big change for me. I wasn't prioritizing myself for so long. And I think I finally realized that prioritizing my own health and rest and, mental health has really kind of given me some self-love that I've been missing for, I think, quite a while. And yeah, so it's been a weight loss journey and a self-care journey, sleeping better, eating less, moving more. But yeah, I'm feeling 100 times better than I was when I was struggling my way up Kilimanjaro with you.
Well, it's another proof that it all starts in our brain, and we have to decide first internally what we want to do and stick with it. And you're a proof it works. You just have to start it, right? All right, so let's start.
It's just hard to do it all at once, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not possible. All right, so let's start with a little bit about you. Let's learn a little bit more about you. Starting from your childhood, where did you grow up? What was your childhood? How did it impact you to become who you are today?
Well, that might sound like a bit of a depressing one, really. I grew up in the south of England with my mum and dad to start with, who were really poor. Like, we didn't have much money. Dad was a window cleaner and mum didn't really work because she had 2 young daughters at home. My dad got cancer when I was 8 and passed when I was 10. So that was a really rough time. And after that, obviously for a 10-year-old to lose their father, it's going to be hugely impactful. And I think it took a long time for the grief to kind of reach me, because as kids, you kind of just adjust to anything. So I kind of started processing that grief in my teens, and also undiagnosed ADHD really affected me in my teens. So I had a lot of mental health problems. And I think the impact that those things have had on me sort of to the current day. My dad was a hard worker. That's been a huge thing for me. Like, you don't complain, you just get on with it and you work hard. And I'm very much like that. But also, I'm not the kind of person that expects things to be handed to me on a plate, because they never have been. And I'll go out and get them. And I'm also not the kind of person to put off things. Like, don't get me wrong, I procrastinate like a queen. But when it comes to like life experiences and going after things, I'm one of those people that I call it like living immediately. I don't go, oh, I'll do that next year, or I'll do that next year. Like, if I want to go somewhere and I want to have an experience, I want to do it soon. And I don't want to say, oh, well, I'll do that when, because for me, like my dad was only 41 when he passed, which is only 2 years older than I am now. And my son's nearly the age that I was when he passed. And I just I don't think about next year, the year after, the year after. I think about here and now and, next week, not far into the future, because I don't consider it guaranteed. So I'm much more about making sure that I'm happy every moment, or as many moments as I can manage, rather than worrying about the future all the time.
Well, that's a great mindset to have, although it was created by a really the wrong experience. You're losing your father, but I think I'm a bigger procrastinator than you. You say that you're going to do something and you do it. I am just like, oh, okay. I take my time, which is so annoying.
Only if it's something that I want to do, though. If it's something that I'm not going to enjoy or that I don't want to do, I will put it off and put it off and put it off and find every excuse under the sun not to do it. But I get there eventually. Usually when there's a deadline, and I do it right before the deadline.
Yeah. So you said that you had an ADHD and you didn't know about it. What was the impact in the teenage years?
I had insomnia quite chronically, and I also struggled with depression. Also, they thought it was depression and anxiety, and self-injury and suicidal ideations, and an eventual attempt on my life when I was 15. And I really had a struggle with I was drinking, I was partying, I was using drugs, and I was doing all these kind of reckless, impulsive behaviors, which now I know are very much associated with ADHD. I really struggled to focus at school because school was boring. I don't say this to blow my own trumpet, but for me, school was easy, and the teachers just talked at you from the front of the room, which I found just the worst way to try to learn. I'm much more of a do it and figure it out learner than like just stand at the front of a room and talk at me or read books to learn. I don't really learn that way, or I don't learn well that way. So yeah, there was like between the ages of sort of 14 and 16, I wasn't even really at school. I didn't attend for most of my exam year, and yet still passed all of my exams. And passed them well. It wasn't like scraping past. I passed them well, but I just wasn't interested in it. I didn't like the structured learning, and I couldn't focus in any of my classes. So yeah, I mean, that was the impact. Had I known and had additional support at that point, I probably wouldn't have felt like, because I felt like I was weird. Like, why is everybody else finding this so easy? And for me, it's so difficult, and I can't pay attention, and everybody else seems to manage to do things, and all I want to do is go out and get drunk or high or just anything I could do to avoid being in school. And when you've got ADHD, you're constantly chasing dopamine hits and highs and excitement to try to balance out the boredom of everyday life. So yeah, that was it. It wasn't the greatest impact, but it made me stronger in the long run.
So how did you, what made you change?
So I left school at 16 and got a job, and it was awful. And the people that I worked with were horrible. So I decided, and then the company folded. And it was over the summer. So I decided that I would give college a go, and went back to college for like 4 or 5 months, and I hated it. And I really only went in when I didn't have any lessons. I just went in to socialize. And I realized that I was just deeply, deeply unhappy. The medication that I was on for depression wasn't working for me, and everything was just making me so sad. And I kind of just snapped, and I went, this is nothing in my life right now is making me happy, and I need to change everything. So I broke up with the boyfriend I was with. I left the part-time job I had. I left school, and I found a little job where I was really busy and on my feet all the time, working in like a cafe, waitressing and cooking, and I liked it because I was busy all day, and I was constantly like talking to people, run off my feet, active, and it kept me so occupied. and sort of stimulated all the time, that there was never a chance to sit at a desk falling asleep because I was so bored. And that was the kind of turning point. And I started seeing a guy that was really boring, but it was a good thing that he was really boring, because I needed boring, and I needed like routine and someone that was safe. And so that kind of kept me on the straight and narrow for a fair few years. I went off the rails again in my 20s. But I think the biggest turning point was like, I had a wild 20s, like lots of traveling and partying and living in party cities. The biggest turning point was having my son. Like when Dexter was born, everything shifted. Where my life had always been about me, it was suddenly about him, and I had a bigger purpose. So sounds cheesy, but yeah, that's been the biggest turning point for me to
No, it doesn't.
be accountable.
It doesn't sound cheesy at all. It is life. This is what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, they do change things a bit, don't they?
And what, so to have a party life, you need to have money. What did you work?
Well, I didn't have much money at all. I was just careful. I ran, when I left the cafe waitressing thing, I did a few small office jobs, and office manager jobs and typing and secretarial work until I was about 26. And I spent a month in Thailand. I'd saved up all my holiday, and all of my, like, every spare bit of money that I had gone to this like holiday fund to spend a month in Thailand. And I went to Thailand and I fell in love with traveling on my own. I was like, this is amazing. What an incredible experience. And I love this place. And I sat on a beach, several daiquiris deep, with a cigarette in my hand, and was like, I'm going to start a business. I need to make more money. And at that point, I decided I was going to use the only skill I thought I had, which was typing. I was really good at spelling and grammar and typing. So I came back from Thailand and started a transcription business. And I ran that for 8 months alongside my full-time job as an office manager, which was insane because I was working like 80, 90 hours a week. And I was just like, 2012 was a year that I barely functioned. Like I can't remember how I managed to do that. And then I left the job because I was making the same amount in my job as I was with the transcription work. So I quit the job. I didn't want to. I was really scared of going out on my own, but I kind of had to. I owed it to myself. So I did that, and I was traveling less because I used to have to drive 2 hours a day for the job that I had. And so I was just really, really cautious with my money. And I always was cautious with my money because I've never really had any. So I would drink for free or cheap where I could. Partying wasn't expensive where I lived in Brighton because I knew all the doormen and I knew I had lots of friends down there. So we would drink at house parties. And so, yeah, drink on the beach, party on the beach. So yeah, it wasn't expensive to party when you doing it on a budget. You can find ways around it. But yeah, it was the transcription business that sort of kept me in Brighton for a few more years, and eventually moved away and fell pregnant with my son. So yeah.
And what happened with this transcribing business? I remember that it was a big moment for you, a big crisis moment for you, which transformed everything, and you started LinkedIn then. Am I right? Yeah,
you are. So 2019, I had a 4-year-old son, and he was going to be starting school the next year. And I was working so many hours, and it was really hard with the toddler at home because transcription takes a lot of like, you need a lot of quiet time because you're working with your headphones on, you're listening to every single word and typing sometimes really complicated subject matters. So it was just too hard to focus on it all while I've got a 4-year-old at home, especially now knowing I had ADHD. No wonder I struggled to focus for long periods with it. So I went onto LinkedIn because I wanted to get some bigger clients, because I had lots and lots of clients sending me lots of small jobs, which took so much of my time to do lots of small jobs. I just wanted to sink my teeth into bigger jobs that paid better. So I started using LinkedIn reluctantly because it was the only idea I had for free marketing. And I hated it, but I thought, I don't really have a choice. So I started posting content on LinkedIn, and quite quickly got a lot of followers, but more importantly, a lot of business. And suddenly I had 5 freelancers working for me, taking on some of the transcription to keep up with demand. I'd had like 100 or more clients within the first sort of 4 or 5 months of posting on LinkedIn. And that was all going really, really well. I still wasn't earning much, but it was going really well, and I had a great reputation. And then COVID hit, and that was where it all turned, because my clients couldn't see their clients. They were doctors and building surveyors, and they had no work coming in. And so I had no work coming in, and my freelancers all had kids at home and they couldn't work anyway. So I had grown a really big following on LinkedIn by then, and like nearly 30,000 people in the first 6 months, I think it was. And people kept saying to me, how are you getting all these leads? How are you getting all this business from LinkedIn? And I was like, well, I'm doing this, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing this. And I realized that I actually knew more than the average person that was using LinkedIn. And I was broke and I couldn't pay the rent, and I had a kid to support. So I said, if you want me to tell you, I'll charge you some money, not very much money, but I'll charge you some money. And suddenly it all just kind of exploded. And I went from earning £100 in a day, if I was lucky, to earning £100 in an hour to teach people how to use LinkedIn. And I was so busy that I had to put my rates up and reduce how much I was doing it. And then I got told off by people saying, you're not charging enough at all. You need to put your rates up. Look at the results we're getting. And it all, spiraled from there.
Wow, amazing. So at that time, how did you manage what were you posting on LinkedIn that created that buzz and you got 30,000? Because it's a big number for such a short time.
It was. I mean, back in 2019, it was easier to grow. The platform was less noisy. So it's not realistic to compare that to today, because if you're growing organically like I did, it's much harder to reach that many people. You could reach a lot of new people much easier back then. But for me, it was just posting whatever was in my head. And sometimes that was funny. Sometimes that was things that people have called inspirational or motivating. I was routinely pretty positive. LinkedIn was less fun back then. And I think because I was posting things that were quite humorous and a bit tongue in cheek and a bit different from what people expected, they were like, oh, this is different. And I was also telling stories. So I was telling stories about my life as a single mum and my experiences. And I was bringing my son into the content that I was creating, like videos of us together, and getting him involved in building my brand, and pictures of my dog and stories of our travels, and letting people know who, if they worked with me, who they're investing in. And it's not just me, it's me, a solo parent, trying to make it out on my own and do everything by myself, and people related to it. And I think people started to genuinely care. And I was always in the comments having conversations and getting to know people. So my comment sections became more important than my posts, because people were actually laughing and joking and connecting with one another in the comment sections. And that still happens to this day. Like people go to my comment sections and know they're going to be able to have a laugh and a joke with the other people that are there, or have some really good conversations. And I will be there responding to those comments as well. So I think, a combination of those things, and different formats, my content was bright. It was colorful. I look different than the average entrepreneur on LinkedIn. So that didn't hurt either, because there's not that many people on LinkedIn with neck and hand tattoos. So that did certainly work to grab people's attention, but they wouldn't have stayed with me so long if that was the only reason they they followed me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
When did you have all this done, and how long did it take?
The tattoos. I had my first one when I was 14 and gradually collected them over the next like 20 years. I haven't had any new ones done in years. I wouldn't like to, I mean, there's over 100 hours of tattooing on me easily, probably more, quite a lot more than that. Yeah, it's been a long old road of a lot of pain, but yeah, I forget that I've got them these days. It's just, I don't notice them when I look in the mirror. They're just so, it's just part of who I am.
So part of you.
Yeah. And it's different these days as well. Like the reactions that you get as a tattooed woman aren't nearly as 10 years ago. The reaction, people stared a lot more and made a lot more assumptions. It's definitely eased up. And, on LinkedIn, I used to get a lot of pushback, particularly from Americans. Like the more traditional and conservative Americans didn't like the fact that I was tattooed and would quite often comment. It's quite rare now that someone will push back about me being a tattooed professional, which is a relief. People are getting the message that it's not about how you look, it's about what you're able to do, I suppose.
To do, yeah. So many people struggle with the idea of personal brand and putting themselves out there. What is your advice for them?
I think people, when you say personal brand, people mistake it to mean it has to be deeply personal. And that's not the case. I always say to people, it's about exposure, not feeling exposed. You're not there to tell everybody your deepest, darkest secrets. And I know that there are people that do share a lot of very personal things. And I've definitely shared things that people would consider to be very personal over the years. But that's depending on what you're comfortable with. When you're building a personal brand, it's just allowing people to know the human behind the business, not just about the business, because it helps people to connect with you on a more deep level. When I'm delivering trainings in companies, I say to people like, imagine if I stand up the front here and I say 10 facts about myself. I love to travel. My favorite food is spicy food. Like I love spicy food. I'm a massive dog lover and I'm a vegetarian, and I like list off a load of facts about myself. Most people in the room will find one thing about me that they have in common with me. And now that's going to position me in their brain more prominently than somebody else that does what I do that hasn't connected that way, because we know ourselves so well. Yep. And when we connect a new thing with something we're really familiar with, it will help us to remember the new thing better. Like psychologically speaking, that is how we create memories more powerfully and easier. So when you find something in common with a person or a brand, you're more likely to remember it. So every time you talk about something relating to who you are or what you think about something, your opinions, experiences, likes, dislikes, you're creating these invisible threads with people. And the more invisible threads you have with each of those people in your network, the higher the chance that they're going to bring your name up when an opportunity that relates to you comes up, whether that's with themselves or with somebody that they know. Do you know someone who does that? And it's creating those invisible strings. But that doesn't have to be, I'm going to share every detail about my children. It could just be talking about the fact that you're a parent. That could be it. Or, maybe you're talking about the fact that you started your parenting life later on in life and people connect with that. It doesn't have to be every detail about being a parent and photos of your children. It can just be the fact that you are a mum or a dad or whatever your parenting situation is. So people just mistake it. They take it too deep and they go, I don't want to say every personal detail about myself. I'm not asking for your medical history. I'm just asking dig a little bit and tell me a little bit about who you are. Maybe you love to play golf, but I don't need to have 10 photos of you playing golf every week. So that's it. Basically, like you don't, when you're creating a personal brand, it doesn't have to be super personal. It just has to be personal enough to create connection.
First of all, the way you explained what personal brand is was great. So simple and down to earth. It's just like you can make an episode on that only. And the question was, how did you grow from 30,000 to 100, whatever you are at the moment, fast? Because you really kind of catapulted yourself up. I know personal stories, but is there anything else that helped you?
I think consistency has been the biggest thing. I've been almost consistently present for nearly 5 years now. And, I show up almost every day. I post most days. I had a bit of a break last week because I was sick, and I think I didn't post for like 5 days. It's been ages since I didn't post for 5 days. I do take breaks, but they're few and far between when it comes to posting. I create conversations. So the content that I create actually creates conversations with the people that I'm engaging with, and I'm there to have those conversations with people, and I genuinely care. I think there can be a big disconnect. People will have these big follower numbers, but do they actually care, or are they just collecting? And I've always been really focused on building community and supporting the people around me. And I'm not saying that there are, other people with big followings that don't do that. But it's not always the priority. And for me, because I had no expertise when I started on LinkedIn, because I was absorbing everything that people were posting and I was learning so much from it, I felt a huge amount of gratitude for the education that I was receiving and the support that I was receiving. So I was constantly giving back, because I was like, I owe these people so much. Like, I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for all these incredible people that are sharing their knowledge with me. Maybe not specifically to me, but I'm learning from them. So I just always wanted to reciprocate. And I think I've aligned myself with so I support a charity called Hope For, which I know you know about, but the listeners won't. And a few years ago, I did a fundraising incentive when the war broke out in Ukraine, because they work with people in Moldova and Ukraine predominantly that are victims of poverty, war, trafficking, and domestic violence. And, things like that, they did not necessarily grow my brand, but deepen the connection with my brand, because it wasn't just me doing it for PR, despite what some of the haters said. I sacrificed a couple of weeks of my working life to grow this fundraiser and support this charity. And I've stayed, I'm on the board of trustees for the charity now, and I've been out to Moldova twice. I'm going back in October. We climbed Kilimanjaro to raise money for them. Well, you climbed Kilimanjaro. I got most of the way up Kilimanjaro, but it's like they have become a part of my brand, because I don't know, it's hard to say, like the constant content that's brighter, different, fun, sometimes insightful, sometimes emotional. Like, there's a variety, and people never really know what they're going to get from me on a day, and it depends what mood I wake up in, because I don't batch content. I write everything like there and then, whatever I'm thinking about. But I think the fact that people can tell that I'm not just broadcasting to a massive amount of a stadium full of people. I'm going around and getting to know people, and I'm having those conversations because I genuinely want to, and I want to support people like they support me.
You were a LinkedIn trainer for several years, and then you created your community. So can you talk about this? How do you get, as an entrepreneur, how do you get the idea for something? And if you can talk about creating a community, just some lessons about that, because people who want to create a community should know basics.
So the idea for the community, I've been LinkedIn training for a couple of years, and I was thinking, I've got this massive community on LinkedIn, and loads of people, like, I'd seen people creating communities and not doing a very good job of it. And I thought I could do this better if I was going to do it. And people had mentioned it, and I was like, no, because the LinkedIn training is going well. I don't have time to start anything else. And I'm not sure that it would work. And I think I got to like 120,000 followers or 130,000 or something like that when I actually launched the community. the idea came from it because I was bored. I was working on my own. I was a solo parent working from home on my own, and I'd been alone all through COVID. I'd been on LinkedIn for a fair while and enjoyed it and building the community. But I was like, there's so many small businesses like me who need to learn all of these business skills. But when you're a small business owner, and especially when you just start out, you don't have the budget to be buying a copywriting course and an automation course and a newsletter writing course and a sales course. And even if you do have the money to buy all these courses, you don't have the time to do them all and learn to implement them well. And you don't have the budget to hire an expert yet, because you need the skills to be able to make the sales, to be able to earn the money to pay the experts.
To get the money.
Like, this is such a catch-22. And I've spent so much time over the last couple of years learning marketing, learning sales, learning copywriting, learning automating my business, learning managing my money. And I was like, God, like, this is so much. But hold on a minute, I've got this huge network and all these people want me on their podcast and they want me to do free trainings for their community. I was like, these people all owe me a bloody favor. I've been doing stuff for them for years. So I thought, hold on, I can just be the middleman. What if I started a community for small business owners that brings in experts that want my audience anyway? They want to be associated with the brand I'm building because I've got such a strong brand on LinkedIn. So if I give something to them, i.e. my audience, and a captive audience of my community, and the small business owners get all this training for way less money. They pay £50 a month and they get access to experts they'd never afford to be able to hire individually. So that all started formulating in my brain. So I started chatting it through with a few friends and thinking about what else I could add. And that was when the whole sort of started to come together, and I started talking about it, and I built a waiting list. And started figuring out how I was going to host it to start with. And then, we launched it in June 2022, and we got 100 members in the first 6 hours. We limited it to 100 to start with, just so we could iron out any potential problems. We kept it at 100 for the first, I think, 8 weeks. Then we opened the doors to another 50. And that sold out again in a few hours. And then we shut the doors just to manage everything, make sure everything was running smoothly, give those founding members time to get to know one another and us to get used to all the tech and what we could do to improve it. And then we had it open for about, I guess, another 7 or 8 months after that, where people could just come and go as they pleased. And then when I decided to actually move, we had about 200 members. And I decided to move platforms, and we decided to host it on Heartbeat, which is a much more user-friendly platform where everything is in one place. And I absolutely love it. So I said, right, we're shutting membership for a while, and you're not going to be able to get access because we need to move all the existing members across. And my tech lady was fuming because I said, you've got like until she realizes what I've done to join. And then we shut the doors, and we had about 100 new members join in the space of a week. So my tech lady was fuming at me. And then we closed the doors and moved to a waiting list model, which we've been on for the last 7 months, 8 months. And now we've got a waiting list of over 1,100 people. We've got a community of nearly 600 members. We sell out in 6 minutes. We open 25 spaces a month, and it sells out in 6 minutes every month.
Gosh.
That I think is the least, like, people can't sign up any quicker. So 6 minutes is like the fastest it can possibly be. So yeah, it's gone really, really well. But I think, and I actually did a video about this myself yesterday. There's a really big difference between a community and a membership. And there are a lot of people creating memberships but calling them a community, and there's a really big distinction. If it's a broadcast channel where you're giving information, giving resources, etc., that's a membership. That's not, or that's a course, that's what you get with a course. A community is where there are people supporting one another and helping one another and skill swapping and networking and asking advice and receiving it. And that's what we've created. But there are a lot of people and some really big names where people go in, sign up for a community, and they get lots of resources, but they don't get the conversations. They don't get the support, the encouragement, the conversations. And I think it's a buzzword at the moment, growing a community, but it's hard work. You don't just start it and then it just sells and people keep coming in. People will go, I'm not really getting my money's worth, and leave, or I'm not really using it enough, or there's not really enough in it for me. And they will just cancel and leave. So I love my community. Like, I'm in it every day, even when I'm sick, even when I'm on holiday, because I genuinely want to be there and I genuinely love the people that I'm engaging with and getting to know them and seeing their successes and, commiserating when something doesn't work. And I think if you're going to create a community, you have to do it for the right reasons, and you have to be prepared to commit yourself to being part of it. You can't be a leader of a community and just never be involved, because people are signing up partly because of you. So, me and my community managers are there every single day. And it makes a huge difference. We're starting conversations, we're joining them. People are arranging coffee chats with one another. And we're constantly innovating and adding new services and creating new ideas that support people and incentives for them and setting goals for them and all sorts of things. And, I think that's why we retain so many members and we've got such a good reputation. People are constantly referring new members to us. People are constantly posting how great it is and the things that they love about it without us prompting them. And, I think that's been why it's been so successful. But yeah, it's not just an easy win.
Why? Yeah. Why the name Hold? I always wanted to ask you this question.
So it actually stands for the House of LT, which throws back to in the 70s, mostly the 80s and 90s in New York. There was a ballroom scene, and the ballroom scene was predominantly people who were gay or transgender that were outcasted by their families and their friends and society when they just wanted to be themselves. Mm-hmm. And they would throw these balls in these nightclubs, and they'd have they basically form these little families, right? So the House of Evangelista, the House of Gucci, they would have these big fancy names. And then they'd have a house mother. And the house mother would basically be a mum to all these waifs and strays that had been rejected by the mainstream in society, and bring them all together. They'd all get dressed up in these amazing fashions, do these catwalks and dances, and come together to party and have fun and be weird together. They were not saying that transgender and gay people are weird, but they were the weirdos to society. They didn't fit in. And I love that concept, because rather than trying to fit in, they created a community of people where they didn't have to fit in. Not fitting in meant that you fit in with them. And so I fancied myself as a house mother to the entrepreneurs and business owners that didn't feel like they were. I mean, we've got people that would probably say they are ordinary people, but we've also got lots of people in there that are neurodiverse, that are, they love their multicolored hair, their tattoos, they don't necessarily all feel like they fit the mold of what a business owner should be. And we welcome that. There's you have to, as long as you're a nice person, we have a very strict no knobs policy, but as long as you're a nice, decent person that is kind to others, you are welcome. And that's the only requirement for being part of the community. So yeah, that's where it came from. It's a bit, quite deep, I suppose, but the whole
it is
work
deep. It is
shorter. Yeah, that was where it came from. And also a nod to my
House
allyship.
of Lea Turner.
Yeah. The House of LT. Great. It doesn't stand for, well, it does stand for my name, but I didn't want my name in the brand, just in case. Yeah.
All right. So, so you've come from, as you said, a family that didn't have anything. You didn't have money almost all your life, and now you are quite well off, much better than you were before. So how do you stay grounded and don't lose connection with reality.
I don't really spend that much more than I did when I was poor. Like I don't live a frivolous lifestyle. Like I will buy holidays, but we don't go to like 5-star resorts and yachting and all of that kind of thing. I don't think I'm quite at the stage of paying for yachts yet, but I've always been careful with my money, and that's not really changed. Like I drive a nice car and I live in a nice house, but I'm slowly doing up, and I I just am. I don't really have a taste for designer clothes or expensive jewelry. I'm still the same person I was 5 years ago before when I was living on £1,500 a month. And now, it's significantly more that I'm making, but I don't pay myself masses of money. I invest sensibly, and my son's at a private school, so that's a fair expense. But I don't need a lot to be happy. I was happy when I was poor. I was poor and it was stressful, but I was happy and I had what I needed, and that's not really changed. The happiness that I get is from the purpose that I have in the things that I do and the impact it has. That gives me happiness, but spending loads of money it's just not a habit that I have. So it's not a habit I was keen to pick up either, because I think part of me just never believed it would last. And so I got into the habit of just like, don't spend too much because this isn't going to last forever. So let's just be careful with things so that if it all does fall apart, you've got a little nest egg to fall back on. I think that was part of it.
And what does success mean to you now, today?
Do you know what? Over the summer holidays, my son's on summer holidays at the moment, and I have scaled back how much I'm working, like massively. So, I'm not taking meetings every day. I'm not doing any LinkedIn training while he's off. And that for me feels like success. Like I went on holiday for 10 days and didn't take my laptop and did like hardly any work because my team were on top of everything. I can pay all my bills. I can go on nice holidays. I can pretty much go on a holiday anytime I want because I know my team will pick things up. I'm stopping LinkedIn training in December, not because I don't enjoy it, but because my passion now is the membership, and I really want to put everything that I have into that. And I don't want to be then trying to put everything I have into that and doing the LinkedIn training, because then it takes away from me actually having any time to be a parent and enjoy life outside of work. So I feel successful because I wouldn't say I don't worry about money, but I don't worry anywhere near as much. I'm still, there's still that, well, I need to make sure that money's coming in, but I don't feel the pressures that I felt before. And I think a lot of that is also with the whole having a recurring revenue every month. That eases the pressure of having to do work that I don't want to do, or having to work more hours than I want to. I can, if I want to, maintain the halt by just from my phone a couple of hours a day if I wanted to. And for me, that freedom with my time and the freedom from the constant panic about where the next booking's coming from, and am I going to be able to afford my mortgage? Like life without that. So for me, success is I can provide everything my son needs, everything I need, and I'm happy. And Dexter's happy. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the time. It's the time that you can devote the time to whatever you think is the most important at the moment, without having to think about other things that come in the way. That's also for me is the biggest success in life. Nothing else. Yeah. Great. Can we talk about ADHD a little bit? So once you had your diagnosis, what can you share with people that watch and listen about ADHD, and what were the changes you need to do with your life when you knew already that you have it?
So I was pretty sure for about a year that I have had ADHD after a conversation with a few of my clients that said that they had it. And I was like, oh my God, like that's really similar to the way I am. And then I sought out an official diagnosis. And during my diagnosis procedure, they said to me that you need to have a formal assessment for autism as well, because you're showing a lot of signs of that as well. So I'm not formally diagnosed with autism, but they said it is highly likely that I am autistic ADHD, not just ADHD. I think that surprised me a little bit, because I was very familiar with ADHD, but I wasn't familiar with how autism could show up in women. So I think the key things that really resonated with me when, oh my God, I do that, was my chronic procrastination when something's not interesting, my complete inability to focus on something if I am not interested in it, but my ability to hyper focus. And I mean, forsaking eating and going to the toilet for hours and hours and hours on end when I'm interested in something. I just have an idea and I'd be up all night working on it. And by the morning, I had an entire webinar, entire slide deck, all of the systems set up. And I'm like, wow, that was a busy 8 hours. But I was so fascinated and excited by it that I could work all night and my brain just keeps going. I don't ever stop. I'm really bad at stopping. Like I will go and go and go. And I'm not very good at, I feel like I'm not, if I sit down, not doing anything, I feel annoyed at myself constantly, because I'm like, there are things that need to be doing, or I'll completely crash and I'll just zone out for like hours and I'll be just sort of stuck on the sofa in a doom scrolling my phone, completely like oblivious to everything that's going around me, because I've just completely run out of like social battery or energy for everything. I'm a absolute nightmare when it comes to directions. I can't build like awareness of locations in my head. And if someone gives me directions, I just start getting super, super anxious and stressed about it. I can't, my memory is terrible. My short-term memory is awful. So even when I'm recording a video, if I've got a script, I'll start the sentence, and by the middle of the sentence, I've forgotten, like literally by word 2 or 3, I've forgotten the end. And then I start getting super anxious. I'm an introvert, so I'm really bad at small talk, and I'm almost always having to force myself to make eye contact with strangers when I'm having conversations, and I feel really like uncomfortable and anxious when I'm meeting new people and strangers. I don't like physical contact. I'm quite sensitive to noises, and like if I'm in a busy airport, I'll wear loop earplugs because the ambient noise really, really raises my blood pressure, and I start feeling really anxious. The same like in a busy pub, because I can't focus on the conversations with the person that I'm having the conversation with, because all I can hear is the clinking of glasses and a door opening and somebody else chatting instead of zoning in on the person. I'm really sensitive to light. Like I basically wear sunglasses almost all year round when I'm outside, because I struggle with light sensitivity. So yeah, there's lots of little things. And I had quite an unusual symptom of ADHD, which I didn't know was ADHD as a teenager, that I had tests for because I thought I was epileptic. And it's called intrusive sleep disorder. And it's where your brain literally lacks so much dopamine that you almost like a toy with a battery running out, and you will just completely fall asleep. And I used to do it in my lessons at school, and they thought I was narcoleptic or epileptic. I had brain scans to try and figure out what it was. And as it turns out, it was the severe lack of dopamine in my brain, and my body, my brain just shut down and I would fall asleep. So yeah. And I was banned from driving for 3 months because it kept happening when I was driving. And it doesn't now, because I know to like have a podcast on or have a phone call if I'm doing a long drive, and it keeps my brain ticking over. But I didn't know that at the time. Yeah. So lots of things.
Wow, that's and so that's a lot of things. I can recognize some of them.
And there's not, there's so much more as well. Like the list of how it can manifest, especially in women, is vast and long.
So what changes did you do? What tweaks did you do to your life to manage it better?
I mean, the biggest thing that came out of a diagnosis was realizing that I'm not crap at life. I was like, I've constantly been watching other people and going, how are they handling this? How can they just like take the laundry out of the dryer, fold it all and put it away when I can't do that? Like I will leave it in the basket for days. Like I physically cannot bring myself. And it sounds so stupid, but it's like there's a wall between me and doing this laundry. And I was like, why can everybody else do it? And it's so difficult for me. And now I just go, it's just not I'm just not going to do it. And, you know, I've got a lovely cleaning lady and I asked her, would she mind doing it? And she said, yeah, absolutely. So the things that I can't do or hate doing and punish myself and feel guilty for, I just find different ways of coping. I always lose my keys. I was forever losing my keys, like never knew where they were. And I just started training myself. When I walk in the house, they go in one place and they always go in that same place. And if I ever see them somewhere else, I stop everything that I'm doing and put them back. And I've like little habits that I'm training myself to do. But the biggest thing was forgiving myself. And I haven't gone on to medication yet because I've not felt like that I want to take that step at the moment. I'm not saying I won't ever, but I haven't at the moment. I've tried it and I was still doing DIY at like 11 p.m. I was like, this is wild. This is like, I used to feel like this when I was taking drugs in my 20s. Like, I don't think I can cope on this all the time. But no, I mean, I haven't made massive changes. I'm much more forgiving of myself. I don't hate myself for being incapable or less able to do things. And I wear loop earplugs around. I've always got a pair around my neck when I know I'm going anywhere noisy. I don't feel bad if I just need to have a time out from social situations. I don't put myself in situations that I know are going to be unbearable. And I make allowances when I'm in one that I think I can do this, but I'm going to need these allowances. So, and my assistants pick up lots, like forms. I'm so bad with forms. I will put a form off for weeks and weeks and weeks until I'm getting angry reminders. And now Luke does those for me. It doesn't matter what it's for. He will fill in a form for me and just sends it to me to sign. So yeah, those are the kind of like, there's so much good advice online to help deal with things. So, and I think it's a massive resource online now to look for things to help. And that's helped as well.
But I completely agree with you. The moment you know why you're so different, it's kind of when you forgive yourself, it's amazing. And again, it's something that you have to do for yourself in your brain inside to forgive yourself. And it's so powerful. Absolutely. To the extent that you don't need to take any medications because now you know.
Yeah.
It's amazing how the brain works, right?
I never will, but I might.
Yeah.
You know, it's something that's an option in the future, but I can't guarantee that I'm going to.
Let's finish with two kind of personal questions. What was the best day in your life and what was the worst day in your life?
The best day in my life was when my son was born. And I think I thought so. Nothing will ever beat that. Like holding him for the first time and realizing life was never going to be the same again in the best possible way was like the best thing ever. The worst possible day in my life. I mean, if I look back, like losing my dad was obviously a really significant one, but at the time it didn't feel like the worst day of my life because he'd been ill for so long. I think in recent years, the worst day of my life was walking down Kilimanjaro. Like, I don't think I've ever been so miserable in my entire life. 11 hours and 50,000 steps downhill. I lost 2 toenails.
Gosh.
It was raining. It was snowing. It was boiling hot at points. I was wading through rain and mud, and I was convinced I was going to get kidnapped when I got to the bottom because nobody knew where I was. I was like, it was honestly, I've never felt so depleted and miserable and frightened in my whole life. So that was probably one of my worst days ever.
Worst days. Oh. And last one, what is the one thing we still don't know about you?
I don't know. I share so much. I don't know. That's a really tricky one.
I can't believe that we know everything about you.
I don't know. Like, I'm such an open book that, like.
Okay, we know. I mean, we assume we know everything.
If we don't know, it's probably best we don't know. I will get myself in trouble.
Thank you, Lea. Thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Thank you. Me too.
If you like this episode, please subscribe or leave a comment and share your thoughts. I would love to hear from you.